democracy, rule of law and fundamental rights. Mrs. Veld.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased that we're having this debate here today because we've travelled quite a road since we decided a year and a half ago to draw up this legislative report. First of all, I would like to thank all the shadow rapporteurs and my co-rapporteur in AFCO, and these are not just hollow words, but I think that we've had a really very fruitful and constructive cooperation, and the result of that cooperation is before you and will hopefully command a large majority when we vote later today. And I note that the only party that is actively campaigning against my report is the Front National, which I find reassuring in a way. Now, the European Commission will today present its working programme for 2017, and Commissioner Timmermans always says that the European Commission has to be big on big things. And I very much agree with that, but I do think that democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights are a big thing. Now, we Europeans, we have something to be proud of. We have been leading for many decades in the area of democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights. So we have a heritage that we can be proud of. So let's now take the opportunity to further deepen and strengthen that culture of democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights in the European Union as a whole, because the EU is more than the sum of member states. Now, democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights, or DRF if I may coin a new abbreviation in EU jargon, is key to the functioning of the European Union. It is key to policy areas like police and justice cooperation, like asylum and refugee policies, but also the internal market and, as we have seen recently, international trade. We're all aware of the so-called Copenhagen dilemma. In other words, when a country wants to join the European Union, it has to meet the highest standards. But member states of the European Union cannot be held to those standards. We don't really have sufficient means to enforce our standards of democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights. But we do feel that the need for a mechanism for upholding DRF, that need is growing. One of our colleagues, Viviane Reding, who was a commissioner at the time for that purpose, took the first steps to the creation of the rule of law framework, which is now triggered by Mr. Timmermans. We have seen the creation of the rule of law dialogue in the Council, the creation of the Friends of the Rule of Law group in the European Council. And Mr. Timmermans, you, when you were still a Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, you yourself called for the creation of a rule of law mechanism. Now, we have the European Commission rule of law framework, and that is very important. I think it is very good that you have triggered it in the case of Poland, but that same case also illustrates the weaknesses and the shortcomings of that mechanism, and therefore the European Parliament has proposed the DRF Pact. Now, the principles, I hope, will find their way into the proposals that the Commission will hopefully put forward. The principles are that the pact or the mechanism should be applied to all member states equally. They should all be assessed on the same basis, and also the EU institutions. It should be a permanent mechanism and not crisis-driven, as we have now in the case of Poland. There should be ongoing monitoring. It should be objective, evidence-based, and not politically motivated. And it should also be building on existing instruments and be realised under the current treaties. And finally, our mechanism foresees close involvement of the national parliaments. Now, I'm very much looking forward to the debate, and I very much hope that the European Commission will join the big majority in the European Parliament and come forward with proposals that build on the report that we will adopt today. Thank you.
Merci, Madame le rapporteur. Thank you very much. Mr. Timmermans has the floor now, sir.
Thank you, President. I would like to thank the European Parliament for today's debate on the establishment of an EU mechanism on democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights. In particular, I would like to thank the rapporteur, Sophie in 't Veld, for her personal engagement and the